Story 1. The Baby Who Never Cried. What if I told you that silence from a baby could be more terrifying than any scream you've ever heard? Jennifer Walsh thought she'd won the parenting lottery when her daughter Emma was born completely silent. While other mothers in the maternity ward complained about sleepless nights, Jennifer enjoyed 12 hours of uninterrupted sleep, bragging to friends about having the perfect baby. For 6 blissful months, Emma never made a sound. She slept through the night, ate without fuss, and never disturbed the neighbors. Jennifer felt like the luckiest mother alive, posting photos on social media of her peacefully sleeping child, while other parents shared stories of crying marathons. But when Emma turned 8 months old, doctors discovered why she never cried. Advanced brain scans revealed she had been born with a rare neurological condition called congenital analgesia, the complete inability to feel pain. What Jennifer had thought was a blessing was actually a death sentence in disguise. The nightmare began when Emma started crawling. Without pain signals to warn her of danger, she would burn herself on hot surfaces, cut herself on sharp objects, and bang her head against walls until she bled. Jennifer had to transform her home into a padded prison, covering every surface and removing anything that could cause harm. By age 2, Emma's behavior became truly disturbing. She would hurt family pets without any emotional response, watching them suffer with cold curiosity. When other children cried, she would stare at them like they were fascinating specimens. She had bitten through her own tongue multiple times without showing any distress. The final horror came when Emma turned 3. During a playdate, she pushed another child down a flight of stairs and watched calmly as the child screamed in agony. When Jennifer asked why she did it, Emma simply said, "I wanted to see what would happen." The child who had never known pain had become incapable of understanding it in others. The Baby Who Never Cried had taught Jennifer that sometimes our body's alarm systems exist for reasons we can't imagine. Emma's silence hadn't been peace. It had been the absence of humanity's most basic survival mechanism. Story 2. The Woman Who Collected Hair. Have you ever wondered what happens when an innocent hobby becomes a gateway to discovering your worst nightmare? Rebecca Martinez had the most harmless obsession imaginable, collecting locks of hair from loved ones. It started when her grandmother passed away, and she kept a small silver curl as a memorial. It seemed sweet, sentimental, and completely normal. Her collection grew slowly over the years. She kept locks from family members, boyfriends, and best friends in tiny labeled envelopes. Mom's first grey hair, Jake's graduation cut, Sarah's wedding trim. Friends found it slightly odd but endearing, like keeping pressed flowers or old love letters. When Rebecca moved to Portland for a new job, she met David at a coffee shop. He was perfect, charming, understanding, and even bought her a beautiful antique wooden box for her hair collection. For 8 months, their relationship was a fairy tale. David was attentive, romantic, and never questioned her quirky hobby. Everything changed the morning. Rebecca woke up early and noticed several strands of hair on David's pillow. Without thinking, she collected them for her box. But when she examined them under her magnifying glass, something was wrong. The hairs were different textures and colors, as if they belonged to multiple people. Her curiosity turned to obsession. She began secretly examining every hair David naturally shed, discovering that each week brought new varieties. Blonde, brunette, red, grey, some with roots suggesting different ages and ethnicities. It was impossible for them all to be his. One night, Rebecca followed David to an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. When she finally gathered the courage to investigate, she found a basement filled with hundreds of wigs, hair extensions, and photographs. Each sample was labeled with names, dates, and locations. The photos showed women sleeping, unconscious, while David carefully cut locks of their hair. The most terrifying discovery was a map on the wall marked with red pins, each representing a location where David had collected hair. Rebecca recognized many as places where women had gone missing over the past 2 years. Her innocent hobby had led her to become an unwitting accomplice to something far more sinister. The woman who collected hair for love had discovered she was living with someone who did it for reasons that would haunt her forever. Her harmless obsession had become the key to uncovering a predator's hunting ground. Story 3. The Man Who Bought Every Plant. What if I told you that the most beautiful garden in the neighborhood was fertilized with something no plant should ever grow from. Marcus Chen was known throughout Maple Street as the plant guy. His house was surrounded by the most spectacular garden anyone had ever seen. Over 400 species of exotic plants, rare orchids, and carnivorous specimens that attracted botanists from 3 states. Marcus spent every weekend at nurseries, garden centers, and exotic plant auctions. His house had become a living greenhouse where every room contained some form of vegetation. He claimed plants brought him peace, and that nurturing them was his form of meditation. Neighbors often stopped by for gardening advice, always leaving impressed by his knowledge and dedication. The obsession escalated when Marcus began purchasing increasingly rare and expensive plants. He spent his entire inheritance on specimens that required extreme care, controlled temperatures, specific humidity levels, and specialized nutrients. He converted his basement into a climate-controlled growing facility that looked more like a scientific laboratory than a hobby space. Problems started when neighbors noticed Marcus receiving mysterious nighttime deliveries. Large refrigerated trucks would arrive after midnight, and workers would carry heavy-wrapped bundles into his basement. When asked about it, Marcus became defensive and started avoiding his neighbors altogether. The truth began to surface when a delivery truck accidentally dropped a package on Mrs. Henderson's lawn. The package split open, revealing what appeared to be human bone fragments mixed with commercial fertilizer. When she confronted Marcus, he became violent and threatened to feed her to his gardens if she didn't mind her own business. Police investigation revealed that Marcus had been purchasing human remains from corrupt funeral homes and crematoriums. His exotic plants weren't thriving on specialized plant food. They were being nourished with ground human bones, ash, and decomposed tissue. The basement contained evidence of at least 30 bodies that had been processed into fertilizer. The most horrifying discovery was Marcus's journal, detailing how different human nutrients affected plant growth. He had been conducting experiments on which body parts produced the most vibrant flowers, keeping detailed records of his gruesome agricultural research. The man who bought every plant had found the perfect way to dispose of evidence while maintaining the neighborhood's most admired garden. His love of botany had hidden something far more sinister than anyone could have imagined. Story 4. The Girl Who Talked to Dolls. Can you imagine if the voices your child claimed to hear from their toys were actually real? 8-year-old Sophia Chen had an extraordinary imagination that amazed her parents. She maintained elaborate conversations with her doll collection, creating detailed backstories, personalities, and even family trees for each of her 60 porcelain and cloth companions. Sophia's parents were proud of her creativity. She would host tea parties where she included all her dolls, speaking for each one in different voices and accents. Her grandmother had started the collection, and relatives continued adding to it on birthdays and holidays. The dolls were beautifully crafted antiques and modern pieces that filled her entire bedroom. The conversations became increasingly sophisticated and disturbing. Sophia began sharing secrets that her dolls told her, stories about previous owners, descriptions of houses she'd never visited, and knowledge of historical events far beyond her education level. Her parents initially attributed this to an exceptional imagination and perhaps overexposure to historical documentaries. Everything changed when Sophia began repeating specific information she couldn't possibly know. She mentioned names of people who had died decades before she was born, described rooms in houses across the country in perfect detail, and spoke about family tragedies that had never been discussed in her presence. The breaking point came when Sophia told her mother that Eleanor had described the car accident that killed her previous owner's family. When her mother asked which doll was Eleanor, Sophia pointed to a porcelain doll purchased at an estate sale. Curious, her mother decided to research the doll's history. The investigation revealed that the doll had belonged to Eleanor Whitmore, a 7-year-old girl who died in a car crash in 1967, along with her parents and younger brother. The family selling the doll confirmed it had been in their attic for decades, inherited from a great aunt who had been Eleanor's neighbor. The most terrifying development was when Sophia began acting as if the dolls were controlling her behavior. She would speak in voices that weren't her own, using vocabulary and expressions from different time periods. Her personality began fragmenting as she claimed different dolls were taking turns being in charge. The girl who talked to dolls had opened a door to something her parents couldn't explain. What had started as innocent childhood play had become a connection to voices from the past that perhaps should have remained silent. Story 5. The Old Man Who Fed Pigeons. What if the kindest person in your neighborhood was actually conducting the most disturbing experiment you could imagine? Harold Finch was beloved by everyone in Riverside Park. For 7 years, he had arrived every day at 3 p.m. sharp with bags of breadcrumbs to feed the pigeons. Children called him Grandpa Bird, and parents considered him a harmless old man who found joy in simple pleasures. Harold's dedication was remarkable. Rain or shine, he never missed a day. He had trained hundreds of pigeons to recognize him, and they would flock to his bench the moment he appeared. Some would perch on his shoulders and eat from his hands. Tourists would stop to photograph the charming scene of the elderly man surrounded by his feathered friends. The pigeon population exploded exponentially. What had started as small groups became massive flocks that began causing serious problems throughout the park. Droppings covered benches, statues, and walkways. The birds became aggressive, attacking people who brought their own food and stealing snacks from children's hands. When park authorities asked Harold to reduce his feeding, he became hostile and refused. He claimed the pigeons depended on him, and that stopping would be murder. Security guards noticed he had begun arriving at unusual hours, feeding birds at 2 a.m. and talking to them as if they were people. The truth was discovered when a health inspector investigated a bird flu outbreak in the area. Harold wasn't just feeding pigeons breadcrumbs, he was giving them a special mixture containing human medications. Analysis revealed traces of antidepressants, anti-anxiety drugs, and experimental psychiatric medications in the birds' systems. Further investigation uncovered Harold's basement laboratory where he had been stealing medications from the senior center where he volunteered. He had been using the pigeons as test subjects for pharmaceutical experiments, documenting their behavioral changes and reactions to different drug combinations. The most disturbing discovery was Harold's detailed journals describing how various medications affected the birds' behavior, their ability to navigate, and their social interactions. He had been conducting unauthorized pharmaceutical trials on hundreds of animals while appearing to be a kindly old man. The old man who fed pigeons had been using the birds as his personal laboratory, turning an act of apparent kindness into a cover for illegal animal experimentation. His gentle demeanor had hidden a mind that viewed living creatures as disposable test subjects. Story 6. The Mother Who Organized Perfect Playdates. What if the most trusted parent in your neighborhood was using your children for psychological experiments? Sandra Williams was every parent's dream neighbor. She organized the most elaborate and entertaining playdates for her son Tyler and his friends, turning her house into a wonderland of themed activities, gourmet snacks, and educational fun. Every weekend, Sandra hosted different groups of children for perfectly planned activities. One Saturday might be a pirate adventure, complete with treasure hunts and costumes, while the next could be a science party with safe experiments and educational games. Children always returned home excited, begging their parents to let them go back to Tyler's house. Sandra documented every playdate meticulously. She maintained detailed photo albums, guest lists, and activity logs. She took notes on each child's preferences, fears, allergies, and behavioral patterns. Other parents admired her dedication and organizational skills, often feeling inadequate compared to her elaborate preparations. However, parents began noticing their children returning from Sandra's house with strange behaviors. Some kids had recurring nightmares. Others became unusually quiet or aggressive. When parents asked what happened, children gave vague or contradictory answers, as if they had forgotten important parts of the day. The situation became concerning when several children mentioned special games that Sandra organized in her basement. They described activities that sounded innocent but had disturbing elements: role-playing exercises where they had to pretend to be different people, psychology experiments presented as fun games, and sessions where they had to share family secrets. One mother decided to investigate when her 6-year-old son began showing signs of trauma. She secretly recorded a playdate using a device hidden in her son's backpack. What she heard led her to immediately contact authorities. Sandra had been using the playdates to gather intelligence on neighborhood families and psychologically manipulate the children. The recordings revealed that Sandra had been conducting unauthorized psychological experiments on children, testing their responses to various stimuli and measuring their susceptibility to manipulation. She had been documenting which techniques made children more compliant and willing to share private family information. The mother who organized perfect playdates had been using her reputation as a devoted parent to gain access to vulnerable children for her twisted psychological research. Her seemingly innocent gatherings had been cover for something far more sinister. Story 7. The Librarian Who Remembered Everything. Have you ever met someone whose perfect memory might actually be a curse for everyone around them? Margaret Foster was the most helpful librarian Millbrook had ever known. She could recall every book in the library's 50,000-volume collection, remember every patron's reading preferences, and provide recommendations that seemed almost psychic in their accuracy. Margaret's memory was legendary. She could recite entire conversations from years ago, remember exactly what patrons wore on specific dates, and recall detailed personal information people had shared in casual conversation. Patrons loved how she remembered their names, their children's ages, and their interests. She made everyone feel special and valued. Her ability to remember everything made her invaluable to the community. She helped solve family genealogy mysteries, assisted researchers with obscure historical questions, and could locate information that others couldn't find. The library board considered her their greatest asset and couldn't imagine operating without her. But Margaret's memory extended beyond professional duties. She began remembering things people had said in private conversations, details about their personal lives that they had never shared with her, and information about their daily routines that she couldn't have known legitimately. The first red flag came when Margaret started making comments that revealed knowledge of people's private affairs. She would mention details about marital problems, financial difficulties, and family secrets that patrons had never discussed with her. When questioned, she would claim she had overheard conversations or inferred information from their reading choices. Investigation revealed that Margaret had been secretly recording conversations in the library for years. She had installed hidden microphones throughout the building and was using the recordings to blackmail prominent community members. Her perfect memory wasn't natural. It was supplemented by illegal surveillance. The most disturbing discovery was Margaret's private office, filled with detailed files on every library patron. She had been collecting personal information, photographs, and recorded conversations to build comprehensive profiles on hundreds of people. She had been using this information to manipulate local elections, business deals, and personal relationships. The librarian who remembered everything had been using her position to spy on the entire community. Her seemingly helpful nature had been a cover for a sophisticated information-gathering operation that had compromised the privacy of everyone who had ever visited the library. Story 8. The Neighbor Who Always Helped. What if the person you trusted most in your neighborhood was systematically destroying your life while appearing to save it? Robert Chen was the neighbor everyone wished they had. He was always available to help with household repairs, pet sitting, package deliveries, and emergency situations. His kindness seemed endless, and he never asked for anything in return. Robert had lived on Elm Street for 12 years and had helped every family through various crises. He had spare keys to most houses for emergencies, knew everyone's schedules, and was always the first person neighbors called when they needed assistance. His reputation for reliability and generosity was unmatched. His helpfulness extended to every aspect of his neighbors' lives. He would offer to fix appliances, water plants during vacations, walk dogs when owners were sick, and even help with computer problems. Robert seemed to have endless skills and infinite patience for helping others. But patterns began emerging that were too consistent to be coincidental. The problems Robert solved often recurred shortly after he fixed them. Appliances would break again, pipes would leak, and electronics would malfunction. Neighbors found themselves increasingly dependent on his help as problems multiplied. The truth began to surface when one neighbor installed a security camera and caught Robert sabotaging the very systems he had previously repaired. He would create problems during his helpful visits, then return later to fix them, establishing himself as indispensable while maintaining his helpful image. Further investigation revealed that Robert had been systematically creating the crises he then solved. He had been damaging appliances, introducing computer viruses, loosening plumbing connections, and even releasing neighborhood pets so he could find them. His help was a cover for deliberate sabotage. The most shocking discovery was Robert's detailed journal documenting his psychological manipulation of each neighbor. He had been studying their vulnerabilities, creating problems that would make them increasingly dependent on him, and using his access to their homes to gather information for identity theft and fraud. The neighbor who always helped had been systematically destroying the lives of everyone who trusted him. His apparent kindness was actually a sophisticated con game designed to gain access, create dependency, and exploit the very people he appeared to be helping. Story 9. The teacher who loved her students. Can you imagine if the teacher who cared most about your child was actually stealing their childhood one memory at a time? Mrs. Patricia Vance was every parent's dream educator. She had taught third grade at Riverside Elementary for 15 years and was known for her extraordinary dedication to her students' emotional and academic development. Mrs. Vance went above and beyond for her students. She stayed after school to help struggling learners, organize special field trips, and maintain detailed portfolios of each child's progress. Parents frequently praised her for the individual attention she gave their children and the remarkable improvements they showed in her class. Her classroom was a wonderland of educational materials, comfortable reading nooks, and personalized learning stations. She knew every student's interests, fears, and family situations, tailoring her teaching methods to each child's unique needs. Students loved her class and often begged to stay after school to help with classroom tasks. However, parents began noticing strange gaps in their children's memories about school activities. Kids would mention exciting projects or field trips they supposedly took, but when parents asked Mrs. Vance about them, she would claim the children were confusing real events with classroom stories or imaginative play. The situation became more concerning when several children began showing signs of confusion about their own experiences. They would insist they had done things or visited places that their parents knew were impossible. Some children became distressed when their memories were questioned, insisting their experiences were real. One parent decided to investigate when her daughter began having nightmares about special lessons that Mrs. Vance taught in a room that didn't exist in the school. The parent discovered that Mrs. Vance had been using an abandoned storage room to conduct unauthorized experimental education sessions with select students. The investigation revealed that Mrs. Vance had been using techniques borrowed from psychological therapy to implant false memories in her students. She had been convincing children that they had experienced elaborate adventures and achievements that never actually happened, while systematically erasing memories of their actual experiences. The teacher who loved her students had been stealing their authentic childhood experiences and replacing them with fabricated memories. Her dedication to education had masked a disturbing compulsion to control and manipulate the developing minds of the children she was supposed to protect. Story 10. The photographer who captured souls. What if the family photographer who documented your most precious moments was actually stealing something irreplaceable from every person he photographed? Michael Torres was the most sought-after family photographer in the city. His portfolio was stunning, his prices were reasonable, and he had an uncanny ability to capture the essence of his subjects in ways that made his photographs feel almost magical. Michael's work was extraordinary. His photographs seemed to come alive, capturing not just images, but emotions, personalities, and what people described as the soul of his subjects. Families treasured his portraits, often commenting that looking at his photographs felt like experiencing the moment all over again. His studio was filled with thousands of photographs spanning 20 years of work. He had documented countless weddings, family reunions, graduations, and milestone events. His reputation was built on his ability to make people feel comfortable and capture their most authentic selves. But clients began reporting strange experiences after their photo sessions. Many described feeling drained, emotionally empty, or somehow less than they had been before. Some mentioned having trouble remembering the joy they had felt during the photo shoot, as if the happiness had been extracted from the experience. The pattern became more obvious when several clients sought therapy for unexplained depression that began immediately after their sessions with Michael. They described feeling as though something essential had been taken from them, leaving them hollow and disconnected from their own emotions. Investigation revealed that Michael had been using his photography sessions to steal something far more valuable than money. He had been using specialized equipment and techniques to capture and extract the emotional energy from his subjects, leaving them emotionally depleted while he absorbed their joy, love, and vitality. The most terrifying discovery was Michael's private collection of photographs that seemed to move and change on their own. These weren't normal photographs, they contained the captured life force of every person he had photographed. He had been literally stealing souls and storing them in his images. The photographer who captured souls had been using his artistic talent as a cover for supernatural theft. His beautiful photographs were actually prisons for the essence of everyone who had trusted him to document their most precious moments. Story 11. The mailman who knew everyone's business. Frank Morrison had been delivering mail to the Oakwood neighborhood for 23 years. He knew every resident by name, remembered their birthdays, and always had a friendly wave for the children. Frank was more than just a mailman. He was a beloved community fixture who seemed to genuinely care about everyone on his route. Frank's dedication went beyond just delivering mail. He would often check on elderly residents, help carry packages to front doors, and even water plants when people were away. His kindness and reliability made him a trusted friend to hundreds of families who saw him as part of their extended family. But Frank's intimate knowledge of the neighborhood went deeper than anyone realized. He knew who was having financial troubles by the bills they received, who was having affairs by the love letters delivered to different addresses, and who was planning to move by the real estate documents that passed through his hands. The problems started when Frank began using his knowledge in ways that seemed helpful but were actually manipulative. He would mention casually that he had noticed certain types of mail, making comments that made people uncomfortable about their privacy. Investigation revealed that Frank had been systematically opening and reading everyone's mail for years. He had been photographing important documents, keeping detailed records of residents' personal information, and using this knowledge to manipulate and control the neighborhood dynamics. The most disturbing discovery was Frank's extensive files on every resident, containing copies of their private correspondence, financial records, and personal photographs. He had been using his position to spy on the entire community while maintaining the facade of a friendly neighborhood mailman. The mailman who knew everyone's business had been violating federal laws and personal privacy for decades. His position of trust had given him access to the most intimate details of hundreds of lives, and he had used that access to become the neighborhood's unofficial puppet master. Story 12. The gym instructor who transformed bodies. Lisa Park was the most popular fitness instructor at Valley Gym. Her classes were always fully booked, and she had a waiting list of clients desperate to train with her. Lisa had a reputation for helping people achieve dramatic physical transformations in impossibly short periods of time. Her clients worshipped her. They achieved results that seemed almost supernatural, losing massive amounts of weight, gaining muscle definition, and improving their overall health in ways that defied conventional fitness wisdom. Lisa's methods were unconventional, but no one questioned them because they worked. Lisa's transformation programs were intense and secretive. She worked with clients individually, designing custom workout and nutrition plans that she claimed were based on cutting-edge scientific research. She required clients to sign strict confidentiality agreements about her methods. However, several clients began experiencing severe health problems after completing Lisa's programs. They developed autoimmune disorders, metabolic dysfunction, and psychological issues that doctors couldn't explain. The dramatic transformations came with hidden costs that only became apparent months later. Investigation revealed that Lisa had been using illegal performance-enhancing drugs and experimental hormones on her clients without their knowledge. She had been secretly drugging their water bottles and protein shakes with substances that caused rapid physical changes but serious long-term health consequences. The most horrifying discovery was Lisa's underground laboratory where she had been manufacturing and testing experimental drugs on her clients. She had been using the gym members as unwitting test subjects for dangerous pharmaceutical compounds that had never been approved for human use. The gym instructor who transformed bodies had been poisoning her clients while they paid her for the privilege. Her miraculous results came from illegal human experimentation that left her victims with permanent health damage. Story 13. The babysitter who was like family. Rachel Green had been babysitting for the Henderson family for 3 years. She was more than just a sitter. She was like an older sister to 8-year-old Emma and 10-year-old Jake. The children adored her, and the parents trusted her completely with their most precious possessions. Rachel's bond with the children was extraordinary. She knew their favorite foods, their fears, their dreams, and their secrets. She was always available when the parents needed her, and she never asked for extra money when she stayed late or helped with additional tasks. The children's behavior and development flourished under Rachel's care. They became more confident, creative, and emotionally mature. Rachel seemed to have a natural gift for understanding children and helping them grow in positive ways. But the parents began noticing subtle changes in their children's loyalties. Emma and Jake started preferring Rachel's company to their own parents, asking for her constantly and becoming upset when she wasn't around. They began sharing family secrets with Rachel and asking her advice about problems instead of their parents. The situation escalated when the children began talking about special games and secret lessons that Rachel taught them. They described activities that sounded innocent but had subtle elements of manipulation and control that made the parents uncomfortable. Investigation revealed that Rachel had been systematically alienating the children from their parents using psychological manipulation techniques. She had been positioning herself as their primary emotional support while undermining their relationship with their actual family. The most disturbing discovery was Rachel's detailed plan to eventually take custody of the children. She had been documenting fabricated evidence of parental neglect and abuse, planning to use her position of trust to destroy the family and steal the children she had grown obsessed with. The babysitter, who was like family, had been working to actually replace the family. Her loving care was a cover for a sophisticated plan to psychologically kidnap the children and claim them as her own. Story 14. The Dentist Who Cared Too Much. Dr. Patricia Wells ran the most successful dental practice in the county. Her patients loved her gentle approach, her advanced techniques, and her genuine concern for their oral health. She had built a reputation as a dentist who truly cared about preventing problems rather than just treating them. Dr. Wells' preventive approach was revolutionary. She identified potential problems years before they would typically manifest, and provided treatments that kept her patients' teeth in perfect condition. Her long-term patient outcomes were significantly better than industry averages. Her patients rarely needed major dental work, which seemed to prove the effectiveness of her preventive methods. They trusted her completely and followed her recommendations without question, grateful to have found a dentist who helped them avoid painful and expensive procedures. But other dentists in the area began noticing that patients who transferred from Dr. Wells's practice often had unusual dental problems. They would have strange wear patterns, unexplained sensitivity, and damage that didn't match their reported dental history. Investigation revealed that Dr. Wells had been deliberately creating minor dental problems during routine cleanings and checkups. She would cause microscopic damage that would require treatment months later, ensuring a steady stream of returning patients who believed she was preventing problems she was actually causing. The most shocking discovery was Dr. Wells' detailed records, showing how she had been systematically damaging patients' teeth over years while convincing them that her interventions were preventing worse problems. She had been creating the very issues she claimed to be preventing. The dentist who cared too much had been using her position of trust to ensure her patients would need her services indefinitely. Her preventive care was actually a sophisticated system of creating dental problems that would require ongoing treatment. Story 15. The Handyman Who Fixed Everything. Pete Sullivan was the most reliable handyman in the Tri-County area. He had been in business for 15 years and had built a reputation for solving problems that other contractors couldn't handle. Pete could fix anything, and he always guaranteed his work would last. Pete's skills were legendary. He could diagnose problems instantly, often finding issues that other professionals had missed. His repairs were always thorough and effective, and he charged fair prices for work that consistently exceeded expectations. His clients became devoted to him because he was always available for emergencies and never left a job unfinished. Pete took pride in his work and seemed to genuinely care about helping people maintain their homes and properties. But patterns began emerging that were too consistent to ignore. The problems Pete solved often had underlying causes that created new issues months later. Clients found themselves calling him back repeatedly for related problems that other contractors said shouldn't have occurred. Investigation revealed that Pete had been using his repair visits to plant time-delayed problems throughout his clients' homes. He would install faulty components, create weak points in systems, and introduce problems that would manifest weeks or months later. The most disturbing discovery was Pete's systematic approach to creating ongoing work for himself. He had been sabotaging the very systems he repaired, ensuring that his clients would need his services indefinitely, while never suspecting that their trusted handyman was the source of their problems. The handyman who fixed everything had been breaking everything he touched. His reputation for solving problems was built on his ability to create them in the first place. Story 16. The veterinarian who loved animals. Dr. Jennifer Chang had the most successful veterinary practice in the city. Pet owners traveled from hours away to bring their animals to her because of her reputation for miraculous healing and her obvious love for animals. Her waiting room was always full of grateful pet owners whose beloved companions had been saved by her expertise. Dr. Chang's success rate was unprecedented. She seemed to have an almost supernatural ability to diagnose and treat conditions that other veterinarians couldn't understand. Her treatments were unconventional but incredibly effective, and she charged reasonable prices for her extraordinary services. Pet owners trusted her completely, because their animals seemed to sense her genuine care and affection. Dogs would calm down in her presence, cats would purr when she examined them, and even the most aggressive animals would become docile under her care. But other veterinarians in the area began noticing concerning patterns. Animals that Dr. Chang treated would often develop unusual health problems months later, conditions that seemed unrelated to their original issues but required ongoing treatment. Investigation revealed that Dr. Chang had been injecting animals with slow-release toxins during routine visits. These substances would cause health problems weeks or months later, ensuring that pet owners would return for expensive ongoing treatments while never suspecting that their trusted veterinarian was the cause. The most horrifying discovery was Dr. Chang's laboratory, where she had been developing and testing various toxins on animals. She had been using her veterinary practice as a cover for illegal animal experimentation while maintaining the facade of a caring animal lover. The veterinarian who loved animals had been systematically poisoning them while their owners paid her to provide care. Her reputation for healing was built on her ability to create the very illnesses she claimed to cure. Story 17. The neighbor who watched over everyone. Martha Henderson had lived on Maple Street for 37 years and considered herself the unofficial neighborhood watch coordinator. She knew everyone's comings and goings, kept track of suspicious activity, and was always the first person to notice when something seemed out of place. Martha's vigilance was appreciated by her neighbors, especially the elderly residents who felt safer knowing she was keeping an eye on things. She had helped police solve several break-ins by providing detailed observations about unusual activity in the neighborhood. Her knowledge of everyone's routines was comprehensive. She knew when people left for work, when they returned, when they went on vacation, and when they had visitors. Neighbors often joked that Martha was better than a security system. But Martha's surveillance activities went far beyond casual observation. She had installed hidden cameras throughout the neighborhood, positioned to monitor every house and record all activities. Her neighborhood watch was actually an elaborate spy network. Investigation revealed that Martha had been using her surveillance system to blackmail neighbors for years. She had recorded private conversations, photographed personal activities, and documented embarrassing moments that she used to extort money and favors from her victims. The most disturbing discovery was Martha's extensive database of personal information about every resident. She had been using her position as a trusted neighbor to gather intelligence that she used to manipulate and control the entire neighborhood. The neighbor who watched over everyone had been watching them for all the wrong reasons. Her protective vigilance was actually a sophisticated surveillance operation designed to give her power over everyone she claimed to be protecting. Story 18. The delivery driver who always smiled. Tony Martinez had been delivering packages for Metro Delivery Service for 8 years. He was the most popular driver in the company, known for his friendly demeanor, his reliability, and his willingness to go above and beyond for customers. Tony always had a smile and a kind word for everyone on his route. Tony's customer service was exceptional. He would wait for customers who weren't home, help elderly residents carry packages inside, and even assist with minor household tasks when he had time. His kindness made him a beloved figure in dozens of neighborhoods. Customers specifically requested Tony for their deliveries because they trusted him completely. He had keys to many businesses, knew security codes for residential buildings, and was often asked to place packages in specific locations when people weren't home. But Tony's access to so many homes and businesses gave him opportunities that he began to exploit. He started noticing valuable items during his deliveries, observing security systems, and learning about residents' schedules and routines. Investigation revealed that Tony had been systematically burglarizing the homes and businesses on his delivery route. He used his legitimate access to case potential targets, and then returned during off hours to steal from the very customers who trusted him. The most shocking discovery was Tony's detailed records of every home and business he had access to. He had been mapping security systems, cataloging valuable items, and planning robberies while maintaining his friendly delivery driver persona. The delivery driver, who always smiled, had been using his position of trust to rob the people who considered him a friend. His cheerful demeanor was a cover for a sophisticated criminal operation that exploited the very customers he was supposed to serve. Story 19. The pharmacist who cared about health. Dr. Michael Foster had owned Foster's Pharmacy for 12 years and had built a reputation as a pharmacist who truly cared about his customers' health and well-being. He knew every customer by name, remembered their medical conditions, and always took time to explain their medications and answer questions. Dr. Foster's dedication to his customers was extraordinary. He would call to check on people taking new medications, offer free health screenings, and even make house calls to elderly customers who couldn't make it to the pharmacy. His personal touch made him beloved in the community. His customers trusted him completely with their most sensitive health information. He knew about their mental health struggles, their chronic conditions, and their family medical histories. People often confided in him about health concerns they were too embarrassed to discuss with their doctors. But Dr. Foster had been using his customers' medical information for purposes beyond their care. He had been selling prescription data to pharmaceutical companies, insurance companies, and even employers who wanted to discriminate against people with certain health conditions. Investigation revealed that Dr. Foster had been systematically violating patient privacy for years. He had been photographing prescription labels, copying medical records, and maintaining detailed databases of customers' health information that he sold to the highest bidder. The most disturbing discovery was Dr. Foster's collaboration with unscrupulous employers who used the medical information to deny jobs, promotions, and insurance coverage to people with expensive medical conditions. His caring demeanor had been a cover for a massive privacy violation scheme. The pharmacist who cared about health had been profiting from his customers' medical vulnerabilities while they trusted him with their most private information. Story 20. The school janitor who loved children. Eddie Thompson had worked as a janitor at Lincoln Elementary School for 18 years. He was adored by students and staff alike for his gentle nature, his willingness to help, and his genuine love for children. Eddie knew every student's name and always had encouraging words for kids who were having difficult days. Eddie's dedication to the school went beyond his custodial duties. He would stay late to help with school events, volunteer for field trips, and even use his own money to buy supplies for teachers who needed them. His kindness and generosity made him a beloved figure in the school community. Students trusted Eddie completely. He had access to every part of the school, knew where children spent their free time, and was often alone with small groups of kids during after-school activities. His position gave him unprecedented access to hundreds of children. But Eddie's love for children had a darker side that no one suspected. He had been using his position to identify vulnerable children who lacked strong parental supervision or who came from troubled homes. He would befriend these children and gradually gain their trust. Investigation revealed that Eddie had been grooming selected children for years. He would offer them special privileges, give them gifts, and create situations where he could spend time alone with them. His custodial duties provided the perfect cover for his predatory behavior. The most horrifying discovery was Eddie's extensive collection of photographs and videos of children at the school. He had been secretly recording students in bathrooms, changing areas, and private moments, building a massive collection of child exploitation material. The school janitor who loved children had been using his position of trust to exploit the very children he was supposed to protect. His gentle demeanor and helpful nature were a carefully constructed facade that hid his true predatory intentions. Story 21. The ice cream truck driver who brought joy. Mr. Rodriguez had been driving his ice cream truck through the Willowbrook neighborhood for 7 summers. Children would hear his cheerful music from blocks away and come running with their allowance money. He was known for his generous portions, his friendly smile, and his ability to make every child feel special. Mr. Rodriguez went above and beyond for his young customers. He would remember their favorite flavors, give free treats to kids who couldn't afford them, and even make special stops for birthday parties. His kindness made him a beloved figure in the neighborhood. Parents trusted Mr. Rodriguez completely. He had been background checked by the ice cream company. He was always professional and appropriate with children, and he had never given anyone reason to be suspicious. His truck was a source of innocent joy for the entire community. But Mr. Rodriguez had been using his ice cream truck for purposes beyond selling treats. He had been mapping the neighborhood, learning family schedules, and identifying homes where children were often left unsupervised. His cheerful presence was actually reconnaissance for a more sinister purpose. Investigation revealed that Mr. Rodriguez had been working with a child trafficking ring. He used his legitimate access to neighborhoods to identify potential victims and gather intelligence about families. His ice cream truck was the perfect cover for surveillance activities. The most disturbing discovery was Mr. Rodriguez's detailed records of every child he had encountered. He had been photographing children, documenting their routines, and sharing this information with criminals who specialized in child abduction. The ice cream truck driver who brought joy had been using children's trust and innocence to gather information for people who wanted to harm them. His cheerful music and friendly demeanor were tools in a sophisticated criminal enterprise. Story 22. The crossing guard who protected children. Mrs. Sarah Chen had been the crossing guard at Riverside Elementary for 9 years. She was a fixture in the community, known for her dedication to child safety and her warm relationships with students and parents. Every morning and afternoon, she would guide hundreds of children safely across the busy intersection. Mrs. Chen's commitment to safety was unwavering. She would arrive early, stay late, and even work during her lunch break to ensure children were safe. She knew every child's name, their schedules, and their families. Her vigilance had prevented countless accidents. Parents felt completely secure knowing Mrs. Chen was watching over their children. She had become a trusted member of the community, often receiving gifts and cards from grateful families. Her presence provided peace of mind for parents who worried about their children's safety. But Mrs. Chen's detailed knowledge of children's routines and her position of trust gave her access to information that she began to exploit. She started taking photographs of children without permission, documenting their daily patterns and behaviors. Investigation revealed that Mrs. Chen had been selling photographs and information about children to online predators. She had been using her position as a crossing guard to identify vulnerable children and provide detailed intelligence to people who wanted to harm them. The most horrifying discovery was Mrs. Chen's extensive network of contacts who purchased information about children. She had been operating a sophisticated intelligence gathering operation that put hundreds of children at risk. The crossing guard who protected children had been using her position of trust to expose them to danger. Her dedication to safety was a cover for activities that made the children she was supposed to protect more vulnerable than ever. Story 23. The food truck owner who fed everyone. Carlos Mendoza owned Carlos's Kitchen, a food truck that had become a beloved fixture in the downtown business district. For 5 years, he had served delicious, affordable meals to office workers, students, and tourists. Carlos was known for his generous portions, his friendly personality, and his willingness to accommodate special dietary needs. Carlos's food truck was more than just a business. It was a community gathering place. He knew his regular customers by name, remembered their usual orders, and often engaged in friendly conversations about their lives and families. His warm personality made him a favorite among downtown workers. The quality of Carlos's food was exceptional, and his prices were surprisingly affordable. He claimed to use only the freshest ingredients and took pride in preparing everything from scratch. His customers trusted him completely and often brought their families to try his food. But Carlos's low prices were made possible by his use of ingredients that weren't quite what they seemed. He had been purchasing expired meat from corrupt suppliers, using chemicals to mask the smell and taste of spoiled food, and serving potentially dangerous meals to unsuspecting customers. Investigation revealed that Carlos had been systematically serving contaminated food for years. He had been using bleach to clean spoiled meat, adding artificial flavors to hide the taste of rotten vegetables, and serving food that had been stored in unsafe conditions. The most disturbing discovery was Carlos's detailed records of which customers became sick after eating his food. He had been tracking food poisoning incidents and adjusting his methods to avoid detection while continuing to serve dangerous meals. The food truck owner who fed everyone had been poisoning his customers while they paid him for the privilege. His friendly demeanor and affordable prices were a cover for a food safety nightmare that put hundreds of people at risk. Story 24. The Uber driver who knew the city. Jake Morrison had been driving for Uber for 3 years and had built a reputation as one of the most reliable drivers in the city. He knew every shortcut, every traffic pattern, and every neighborhood. His passengers loved his friendly conversation, his clean car, and his ability to get them to their destinations quickly and safely. Jake's customer service was exceptional. He would help elderly passengers with their bags, wait for customers who were running late, and even make stops for passengers who needed to run quick errands. His kindness and professionalism earned him consistently high ratings. Passengers trusted Jake completely. He had access to their home addresses, their work locations, and their personal schedules. Many regular customers would specifically request him for important trips because they knew he was reliable and trustworthy. But Jake had been using his access to passenger information for purposes beyond transportation. He had been documenting passengers' addresses, photographing their homes, and gathering intelligence about their routines and lifestyles. Investigation revealed that Jake had been working with a burglary ring. He used his legitimate access to passengers' addresses to case potential targets, and then provided detailed information to criminals who would rob the homes while the owners were away. The most shocking discovery was Jake's detailed database of passenger information. He had been tracking people's schedules, documenting their valuable possessions, and even recording private conversations that occurred in his car. The Uber driver who knew the city had been using his knowledge to help criminals prey on the very passengers who trusted him. His friendly demeanor and reliable service were a cover for a sophisticated criminal operation. Story 25. The dog walker who loved pets. Amanda Foster had been walking dogs in the Oakwood neighborhood for 4 years. She was known for her genuine love of animals, her reliability, and her ability to handle even the most difficult dogs. Pet owners trusted her completely with their beloved companions. Amanda's dedication to the pets in her care was extraordinary. She would send daily photos and updates to pet owners, provide detailed reports about each walk, and even offer additional services like pet sitting and grooming. Her love for animals was obvious to everyone who knew her. Pet owners felt completely secure leaving their beloved animals in Amanda's care. She had keys to many homes, knew pets' routines and medical needs, and was often trusted with expensive purebred dogs. Her reputation for reliability and care was unmatched. But Amanda's love for animals had a darker side that no one suspected. She had been using her access to homes to steal valuable items while owners were away. Her pet walking service was a cover for a sophisticated burglary operation. Investigation revealed that Amanda had been systematically robbing the homes of her clients. She would use her legitimate access to case homes, identify valuable items, and steal things that owners wouldn't notice missing immediately. The most disturbing discovery was Amanda's method of training dogs to be accomplices in her crimes. She had been teaching dogs to retrieve small valuable items and bring them to her, making the pets unknowing partners in robbing their own owners. The dog walker who loved pets had been using the animals she cared for to help her rob their families. Her genuine affection for animals was real, but it was coupled with a complete disregard for the humans who trusted her. Story 26. The funeral director who honored the dead. Thomas Hartwell had been running Hartwell Funeral Home for 15 years. He was known throughout the community for his compassionate service, his attention to detail, and his ability to help grieving families through their most difficult times. His funeral home was considered the most dignified and respectful in the county. Thomas's dedication to honoring the deceased was legendary. He would spend hours preparing bodies to look peaceful and natural. He would work with families to create personalized services, and he would go above and beyond to ensure that every funeral was a fitting tribute to the person who had died. Families trusted Thomas completely with their most precious memories and their deceased loved ones. He had access to valuable jewelry, personal effects, and family heirlooms that were often buried with the deceased. His reputation for honesty and integrity was unquestioned. But Thomas had been using his position to exploit grieving families in ways they never suspected. He had been switching expensive caskets for cheap ones after families had paid premium prices, and he had been stealing jewelry and valuable items from the deceased. Investigation revealed that Thomas had been systematically defrauding families for years. He would charge for expensive services and then provide cheaper alternatives, pocketing the difference while families were too grief-stricken to notice. The most horrifying discovery was Thomas's basement, which contained hundreds of valuable items stolen from the deceased. He had been grave robbing in the most literal sense, taking advantage of families' trust and grief to steal from the dead. The funeral director who honored the dead had been dishonoring them in the most despicable way possible. His compassionate service was a cover for a criminal enterprise that exploited families during their most vulnerable moments. Story 27. The massage therapist who healed pain. Dr. Lisa Park had been practicing massage therapy for 8 years and had built a reputation as one of the most skilled therapists in the city. Her clients swore by her ability to relieve chronic pain, reduce stress, and improve their overall well-being. Her waiting list was months long. Dr. Park's healing touch seemed almost supernatural. She could identify problem areas that other therapists had missed, and her treatments provided relief that lasted for weeks. Her clients trusted her completely and often referred friends and family members to her practice. Her clients were willing to pay premium prices for her services because the results were so dramatic. Many people credited her with helping them avoid surgery, reducing their dependence on pain medications, and improving their quality of life significantly. But Dr. Park's miraculous healing abilities came from sources her clients never suspected. She had been using her massage sessions to administer illegal drugs through the skin, providing temporary relief that masked serious underlying conditions. Investigation revealed that Dr. Park had been applying topical medications without her client's knowledge or consent. She had been using powerful painkillers, muscle relaxants, and even experimental drugs that provided dramatic short-term relief but caused long-term damage. The most disturbing discovery was Dr. Park's laboratory, where she had been manufacturing and testing various drug combinations. She had been using her clients as unwitting test subjects for dangerous pharmaceutical experiments. The massage therapist who healed pain had been poisoning her clients while they paid her for treatment. Her healing touch was actually a delivery system for illegal drugs that provided temporary relief at the cost of long-term health damage. Story 28. The cleaning lady who made everything spotless. Maria Santos had been cleaning houses in the Hillcrest neighborhood for 6 years. She was known for her meticulous attention to detail, her trustworthiness, and her ability to make any home spotless. Her clients trusted her with their keys, their valuables, and their most personal spaces. Maria's cleaning skills were exceptional. She would spend hours ensuring that every surface was perfect, every room was organized, and every detail was attended to. Her clients often said their homes had never been cleaner than when Maria worked for them. Clients trusted Maria completely. She had access to their homes when they weren't there, she knew their schedules and routines, and she was often entrusted with valuable items and sensitive information. Her reputation for honesty and reliability was unmatched. But Maria had been using her cleaning job to gather intelligence about her clients' lives. She had been photographing valuable items, documenting home security systems, and collecting personal information that she found while cleaning. Investigation revealed that Maria had been working with identity thieves and burglars. She would photograph important documents, steal mail, and provide detailed information about homes and their contents to criminals who would later rob her clients. The most shocking discovery was Maria's extensive database of personal information about her clients. She had been systematically violating their privacy, while they trusted her to clean their most intimate spaces. The cleaning lady who made everything spotless had been making her clients' lives dirty in ways they never imagined. Her meticulous attention to detail was being used to help criminals violate the homes and lives of the people who trusted her. Story 29. The Repairman Who Fixed Computers. Steve Chen ran a computer repair shop that had become the go-to place for tech problems in the community. He was known for his technical expertise, his reasonable prices, and his ability to recover data from seemingly hopeless situations. His customers trusted him completely with their most important digital information. Steve's technical skills were impressive. He could fix problems that other technicians couldn't solve, recover data from damaged hard drives, and upgrade systems to run better than new. His customers often felt like he had saved their digital lives. Customers brought Steve their most sensitive devices, laptops with work documents, phones with personal photos, and hard drives with family memories. They trusted him completely with their digital privacy and their most important files. But Steve had been using his access to customers' devices for purposes beyond repair. He had been copying personal files, stealing passwords, and accessing customers' online accounts without their knowledge or consent. Investigation revealed that Steve had been systematically violating his customers' digital privacy for years. He had been copying personal photos, reading private emails, and even accessing customers' bank accounts and social media profiles. The most disturbing discovery was Steve's massive collection of personal information stolen from customers' devices. He had been building detailed profiles of customers' lives, relationships, and financial situations using information he found on their computers. The repairman who fixed computers had been breaking into his customers' digital lives while they paid him to protect their technology. His technical expertise was being used to violate the privacy of everyone who trusted him. Story 30. The Landscaper Who Created Beauty. Roberto Martinez had been landscaping homes in the Riverside neighborhood for 7 years. He was known for his artistic vision, his attention to detail, and his ability to transform ordinary yards into beautiful outdoor spaces. His clients were proud to show off the gardens he had created. Roberto's landscaping work was exceptional. He would spend weeks planning each project, carefully selecting plants and materials, and creating outdoor spaces that looked like they belonged in magazines. His clients often said their property values had increased significantly after Roberto's work. Clients trusted Roberto completely. He had access to their properties when they weren't home. He knew their schedules and routines, and he was often given keys to gates and storage areas. His reputation for professionalism and quality was unmatched. But Roberto had been using his landscaping work to cover up more sinister activities. He had been burying items in his clients' yards, sometimes stolen goods, sometimes evidence of crimes, and sometimes things that clients were better off not knowing about. Investigation revealed that Roberto had been using his clients' properties as storage and disposal sites for criminal activities. He would bury stolen merchandise, dispose of evidence, and even hide bodies in the beautiful gardens he created. The most horrifying discovery was Roberto's detailed maps showing what he had buried in each client's yard. Some properties contained stolen goods, others contained evidence of violent crimes, and a few contained human remains. The landscaper who created beauty had been using his clients' properties as graveyards and criminal storage facilities. His artistic vision was being used to hide evidence of activities that would have terrified the people who trusted him. Story 31. The Taxi Driver Who Knew Every Street. Frank Williams had been driving taxi in the city for 12 years. He was known for his extensive knowledge of the city, his ability to navigate traffic, and his friendly conversations with passengers. His regular customers would specifically request him because they knew he would get them to their destinations safely and efficiently. Frank's knowledge of the city was encyclopedic. He knew every shortcut, every traffic pattern, and every neighborhood. His passengers trusted him to choose the best routes and to keep them safe during their journeys. Passengers felt comfortable sharing personal information with Frank during their rides. He knew about their jobs, their families, their routines, and their personal problems. Many passengers considered him a friend and looked forward to their conversations. But Frank had been using the personal information he gathered from passengers for purposes beyond friendly conversation. He had been documenting passengers' addresses, schedules, and personal details, and selling this information to criminals. Investigation revealed that Frank had been working with stalkers, identity thieves, and burglars. He would provide detailed information about passengers' lives, routines, and vulnerabilities to criminals who would then target them. The most disturbing discovery was Frank's extensive database of passenger information. He had been tracking hundreds of people's movements, documenting their personal details, and selling this information to anyone willing to pay for it. The taxi driver who knew every street had been using his knowledge to help criminals navigate their way into his passengers' lives. His friendly demeanor and local expertise were being used to make his passengers vulnerable to predators. Story 32. The mechanic who fixed everything. Tony Rodriguez had been running Rodriguez Auto Repair for 10 years. He was known for his honest assessments, his quality work, and his ability to fix problems that other mechanics couldn't solve. His customers trusted him completely with their vehicles and their safety. Tony's mechanical skills were exceptional. He could diagnose problems quickly, fix them efficiently, and always stood behind his work. His customers often said they wouldn't trust their cars to anyone else. Customers trusted Tony with their most expensive possessions and their safety. They relied on him to keep their vehicles running safely and to give them honest advice about necessary repairs. His reputation for integrity and skill was unmatched. But Tony had been using his position to create problems rather than just solve them. He had been sabotaging vehicles during routine maintenance, creating problems that would require expensive repairs in the future. Investigation revealed that Tony had been systematically damaging customers' vehicles while they paid him to maintain them. He would loosen bolts, damage components, and introduce problems that would manifest weeks or months later. The most shocking discovery was Tony's detailed records of which vehicles he had sabotaged and when the problems were likely to appear. He had been creating a steady stream of repair work by damaging the very vehicles he was supposed to be maintaining. The mechanic who fixed everything had been breaking everything he touched. His reputation for quality work was built on his ability to create the problems he was paid to solve. Story 33. The tutor who helped students succeed. Professor Sarah Johnson had been tutoring high school students for 8 years. She was known for her ability to help struggling students improve their grades, her patience with difficult subjects, and her dedication to her students' success. Parents trusted her completely with their children's education. Professor Johnson's teaching methods were highly effective. Students who worked with her would see dramatic improvements in their grades, and many went on to attend prestigious colleges. Her success rate was remarkable, and her waiting list was always full. Parents trusted Professor Johnson with their children's academic futures. They would pay premium prices for her services because the results were so dramatic. Many families credited her with helping their children achieve educational success they never thought possible. But Professor Johnson's remarkable success rate came from methods her students and parents never suspected. She had been helping students cheat on tests, plagiarize papers, and falsify academic records while maintaining the appearance of legitimate tutoring. Investigation revealed that Professor Johnson had been systematically helping students commit academic fraud. She would provide test answers, write papers for students, and even hack into school systems to change grades. The most disturbing discovery was Professor Johnson's network of contacts at schools and testing centers who helped her cheat system. She had been running a sophisticated academic fraud operation that put her students' futures at risk. The tutor who helped students succeed had been teaching them to cheat rather than learn. Her dedication to their success was actually setting them up for failure when their fraudulent achievements were eventually discovered. Story 34. The security guard who protected everyone. Officer Mike Thompson had been working as a security guard at Westfield Mall for 6 years. He was known for his vigilance, his professionalism, and his ability to handle difficult situations. Shoppers and store employees felt safe knowing he was watching over them. Officer Thompson's security work was exceptional. He would patrol the mall constantly, respond quickly to incidents, and maintain detailed reports about security issues. His presence provided peace of mind for everyone who worked or shopped at the mall. Store owners trusted Officer Thompson completely. He had access to their stores after hours. He knew their security systems, and he was often entrusted with valuable merchandise and sensitive information. His reputation for honesty and reliability was unmatched. But Officer Thompson had been using his security position to facilitate crimes rather than prevent them. He had been providing information to thieves about store security systems, valuable merchandise, and employee schedules. Investigation revealed that Officer Thompson had been working with organized retail theft rings. He would disable security systems, provide access to stores, and even help criminals steal merchandise while appearing to be on patrol. The most shocking discovery was Officer Thompson's detailed records of every store's security vulnerabilities. He had been systematically gathering intelligence about how to rob every business he was supposed to be protecting. The security guard who protected everyone had been making them more vulnerable to the very crimes he was supposed to prevent. His vigilance was being used to help criminals rather than stop them. Story 35. The Nurse Who Cared for Patients. Nurse Patricia Williams had been working at Mercy General Hospital for 12 years. She was known for her compassionate care, her clinical expertise, and her dedication to her patients' well-being. Patients and families trusted her completely with their most vulnerable moments. Nurse Williams' patient care was exceptional. She would spend extra time with patients who were scared or in pain. She would advocate for their needs with doctors, and she would provide comfort and support during difficult times. Her compassion was legendary among hospital staff. Patients trusted Nurse Williams with their lives. She had access to their medical records, their medications, and their most intimate health information. Families often requested her specifically because they knew she would provide the best possible care. But Nurse Williams had been using her position to harm patients rather than help them. She had been deliberately administering incorrect medications, tampering with medical equipment, and causing complications that would require extended hospital stays. Investigation revealed that Nurse Williams had been systematically harming patients for years. She would cause medical emergencies, create complications, and even poison patients, while maintaining the appearance of providing compassionate care. The most horrifying discovery was Nurse Williams' detailed records of which patients she had harmed and how. She had been keeping track of her victims like trophies, documenting their suffering while their families thanked her for her care. The nurse who cared for patients had been using her position to harm the very people she was supposed to heal. Her compassionate demeanor was a cover for activities that put vulnerable patients at risk. Story 36. The Pastor Who Shepherded His Flock. Reverend David Martinez had been leading Hope Community Church for 15 years. He was beloved by his congregation for his inspiring sermons, his pastoral care, and his dedication to helping people through their spiritual journeys. His church had grown from 50 members to over 500 under his leadership. Reverend Martinez's spiritual guidance was transformative. He would counsel individuals through personal crises, provide comfort during times of loss, and inspire his congregation to live better lives. His sermons were recorded and shared with people across the country. Church members trusted Reverend Martinez completely. They would confide their deepest secrets, share their personal struggles, and seek his guidance on their most important decisions. His position gave him access to the most intimate details of hundreds of lives. But Reverend Martinez had been using the personal information he gathered from his congregation for purposes beyond spiritual guidance. He had been blackmailing members with their secrets, embezzling church funds, and exploiting the trust of vulnerable people. Investigation revealed that Reverend Martinez had been systematically exploiting his congregation for years. He would use confessional information to manipulate people, steal from church accounts, and take advantage of widows and other vulnerable members. The most disturbing discovery was Reverend Martinez's detailed records of every church member's secrets, financial situation, and personal vulnerabilities. He had been using this information to control and exploit the people who trusted him most. The pastor who shepherded his flock had been leading them not to salvation, but to exploitation. His spiritual guidance was a cover for criminal activities that violated the trust of everyone who sought his help. Story 37. The Counselor Who Helped People Heal. Dr. Jennifer Lee had been practicing as a therapist for 10 years. She was known for her empathetic approach, her clinical expertise, and her ability to help people overcome trauma and mental health challenges. Her clients trusted her completely with their most personal struggles. Dr. Lee's therapeutic methods were highly effective. She would help clients process difficult experiences, develop coping strategies, and make positive changes in their lives. Her success rate was remarkable, and her practice was always full. Clients trusted Dr. Lee with their deepest secrets, their most painful memories, and their most vulnerable emotions. They paid her to help them heal and to provide a safe space where they could work through their problems. But Dr. Lee had been using her therapy sessions to gather information for purposes beyond treatment. She had been recording sessions without consent, sharing client information with unauthorized parties, and using personal details for her own gain. Investigation revealed that Dr. Lee had been systematically violating client confidentiality for years. She would sell information to employers, insurance companies, and even family members who wanted to use it against her clients. The most shocking discovery was Dr. Lee's extensive database of client information. She had been building detailed profiles of people's psychological vulnerabilities and selling this information to anyone willing to pay for it. The counselor who helped people heal had been using their vulnerabilities to cause them harm. Her therapeutic expertise was being used to exploit the very people who trusted her to help them. Story 38. The Banker Who Managed Money. Richard Thompson had been working as a bank manager at First National Bank for 14 years. He was known for his financial expertise, his customer service, and his ability to help people achieve their financial goals. His clients trusted him completely with their money and their financial futures. Richard's financial advice was excellent. He would help clients make sound investment decisions, secure loans for important purchases, and plan for their retirement. His clients often credited him with helping them achieve financial security. Clients trusted Richard with their most sensitive financial information. They would share details about their income, their debts, their financial goals, and their family situations. His position gave him access to comprehensive financial profiles of hundreds of people. But Richard had been using his access to client information for purposes beyond banking. He had been stealing from accounts, manipulating investments, and using client information to commit identity theft and fraud. Investigation revealed that Richard had been systematically defrauding his clients for years. He would transfer money from their accounts, make unauthorized investments, and even take out loans in their names without their knowledge. The most disturbing discovery was Richard's sophisticated money laundering operation. He had been using his clients' accounts to clean money for criminal organizations while maintaining the appearance of legitimate banking activities. The banker who managed money had been stealing from the very people who trusted him to protect their financial futures. His expertise was being used to commit financial crimes against his own clients. Story 39. The Real Estate Agent Who Found Dream Homes. Susan Park had been selling real estate for 9 years. She was known for her knowledge of the local market, her ability to find perfect homes for her clients, and her dedication to helping people achieve their homeownership dreams. Her clients trusted her completely with the biggest financial decisions of their lives. Susan's real estate expertise was exceptional. She would help clients find homes that met all their criteria, negotiate favorable deals, and guide them through the complex process of buying or selling property. Her success rate was remarkable. Clients trusted Susan with their most important financial information. They would share details about their income, their savings, their family plans, and their financial limitations. Her position gave her access to comprehensive financial profiles and personal information. But Susan had been using her access to client information for purposes beyond real estate. She had been working with criminals to identify wealthy targets, providing information about when homes would be empty, and even helping to facilitate break-ins. Investigation revealed that Susan had been systematically exploiting her clients for years. She would provide detailed information about their homes, their valuables, and their schedules to organized crime groups who would then rob them. The most shocking discovery was Susan's detailed database of client properties and possessions. She had been mapping out every valuable item in her clients' homes and providing this information to criminals who would later steal from them. The real estate agent who found dream homes had been turning them into nightmares for the people who trusted her. Her expertise was being used to help criminals violate the homes and lives of her own clients. Story 40. The Plumber Who Fixed Everything. Joe Wilson had been working as a plumber for 16 years. He was known for his reliability, his quality work, and his ability to solve problems that other plumbers couldn't handle. His customers trusted him completely with their homes and their plumbing emergencies. Joe's plumbing skills were exceptional. He could diagnose problems quickly, fixed them efficiently, and always cleaned up after himself. His customers often said they wouldn't call anyone else for their plumbing needs. Customers trusted Joe with access to their homes, their schedules, and their most private spaces. They relied on him to fix their problems honestly and to respect their property while he worked. But Joe had been using his plumbing work to create problems rather than just solve them. He had been sabotaging plumbing systems during routine maintenance, creating problems that would require expensive repairs in the future. Investigation revealed that Joe had been systematically damaging customers' plumbing while they paid him to maintain it. He would create leaks, damage pipes, and introduce problems that would manifest weeks or months later. The most disturbing discovery was Joe's detailed records of which homes he had sabotaged and when the problems were likely to appear. He had been creating a steady stream of emergency calls by damaging the very systems he was supposed to be maintaining. The plumber who fixed everything had been breaking everything he touched. His reputation for quality work was built on his ability to create the problems he was paid to solve. Story 41. The Locksmith Who Secured Homes. Kevin Chang had been working as a locksmith for 8 years. He was known for his expertise with security systems, his quick response to emergencies, and his ability to help people secure their homes and businesses. His customers trusted him completely with their security needs. Kevin's locksmith skills were impressive. He could open any lock, install sophisticated security systems, and provide expert advice about how to protect valuable property. His customers felt safer knowing he had secured their homes. Customers trusted Kevin with their most sensitive security information. They would share details about their valuables, their schedules, and their security concerns. His position gave him access to comprehensive information about how to breach every security system he installed. But Kevin had been using his locksmith work to facilitate crimes rather than prevent them. He had been providing information to burglars about security systems, creating duplicate keys, and even helping criminals break into homes he had secured. Investigation revealed that Kevin had been systematically compromising his customers' security for years. He would install security systems with hidden vulnerabilities, create duplicate keys for criminals, and provide detailed information about how to bypass the security measures he had installed. The most shocking discovery was Kevin's detailed database of every security system he had installed. He had been mapping out the vulnerabilities of every home and business he was supposed to be protecting. The locksmith who secured homes had been making them more vulnerable to the very criminals he was supposed to keep out. His expertise was being used to help criminals rather than protect his customers. Story 41. The Bedroom Mirror. When Sarah bought her dream apartment, she never expected the antique mirror in the bedroom to show her reflections from the past. The ornate Victorian mirror came with the furnished apartment, and the landlord mentioned it had been there for decades. Sarah, a young graphic designer, loved vintage pieces and was thrilled to have such a beautiful antique in her new home. The first few weeks were normal. Sarah would get ready for work each morning, checking her appearance in the mirror's silvered surface, but then she began noticing something odd. Sometimes, just for a split second, she'd catch glimpses of different clothing in the reflection, old-fashioned dresses, hair styled in ways she'd never worn. Sarah initially dismissed these glimpses as tricks of the light or her imagination running wild from work stress. She was pulling long hours on a major project and attributed the strange sightings to exhaustion. But the occurrences became more frequent and more distinct. One evening, as Sarah was brushing her teeth before bed, she clearly saw a woman in 1920s attire standing behind her in the mirror. The woman was pale, with hollow eyes, and seemed to be trying to speak. Sarah spun around, but the bedroom was empty. When she looked back at the mirror, only her own terrified face stared back. Research into the apartment's history revealed a dark secret. The building had been a boarding house in the 1920s, and a young woman named Margaret had died in Sarah's very room. Margaret had been murdered by her jealous boyfriend, who had strangled her in front of that same mirror. The mirror had witnessed the crime and somehow retained an imprint of Margaret's final moments. As days passed, Margaret's appearances became more aggressive. She would pound on the mirror's surface from the inside, leaving no physical marks but creating terrifying sounds. Sarah would wake to find handprints on the mirror that would fade by morning. The trapped spirit seemed to be trying to communicate something urgent. The horrifying truth emerged when Sarah discovered that Margaret's killer had never been caught. The murder had been covered up, and the man had gone on to kill 3 more women in the same building. Margaret's spirit wasn't trying to frighten Sarah, she was trying to warn her. The killer's grandson lived in the building and had been watching Sarah, planning to continue his grandfather's legacy. Sarah barely escaped when the grandson broke into her apartment with a rope, intent on recreating his grandfather's crime. Margaret's spirit had been trying to save her all along, using the mirror as a conduit between worlds. The mirror shattered during the struggle, finally freeing Margaret's spirit, but not before she had saved Sarah's life from beyond the grave. Story 42. Grandmother's Music Box. Emma inherited her grandmother's music box after the funeral, thinking it would be a sweet memento of their shared love for ballet. The delicate porcelain figurine had danced to the same melody for 60 years, and Emma remembered winding it as a child, mesmerized by the tiny ballerina's graceful spins. She placed it on her nightstand, expecting it to bring comfort during her grief. The music box began playing on its own the first night Emma brought it home. She woke to the familiar melody echoing through her bedroom, the ballerina spinning slowly in the darkness. Emma assumed the mechanism was old and faulty, perhaps triggered by vibrations from passing cars or settling floorboards. But the music box seemed to have a schedule. It played every night at exactly 3:17 a.m., always the same haunting melody. Emma tried removing the key, but it continued playing. She wrapped it in blankets to muffle the sound, but the melody persisted, somehow growing louder despite the barriers. Emma noticed that the ballerina's movements were becoming more erratic. Instead of the smooth, graceful spins she remembered, the figurine now jerked and twitched, as if struggling against invisible restraints. The porcelain face, once serene, seemed to bear an expression of anguish. A visit to her grandmother's neighbour revealed a chilling detail Emma had never known. Her grandmother hadn't died peacefully in her sleep as the family had been told. She had been found at the bottom of the stairs, having apparently fallen while trying to stop a break-in. The music box was playing when they found her body, and it had been playing continuously until the paramedics arrived. The neighbour also mentioned that Emma's grandmother had been acting strangely in her final weeks, claiming someone was breaking into her house and moving things around. She had started sleeping with the music box beside her bed, saying it helped her feel safe because it would alert her if anyone entered her room. Emma realized the music box wasn't malfunctioning, it was still doing its job. It played whenever someone entered the room uninvited, just as it had tried to warn her grandmother. The jerky movements of the ballerina weren't a mechanical failure, they were mimicking her grandmother's final struggles. The terrifying truth came to light when Emma discovered that her grandmother's death hadn't been an accident. The intruder had been her own son, Emma's uncle, who had been slowly poisoning her for months to get his inheritance early. The music box had been playing that night because it detected the killer's presence, but the poison had already weakened her grandmother too much to escape. The music box continued its eternal vigil, trying to identify the murderer who had never been caught. Story 43. The dating app that knew too much. Marcus downloaded the dating app SoulSync after friends raved about its uncanny ability to find perfect matches, but he never expected it to know things about him that he'd never shared online. The app's algorithm seemed impossibly sophisticated, suggesting matches based on preferences Marcus had never even admitted to himself. Within days, he was getting messages from women who seemed to know his deepest desires and fears. The first match, Jessica, mentioned their shared love of a specific indie band that Marcus had only listened to in private. She brought up his childhood fear of clowns, without him ever mentioning it. When they met for coffee, Jessica knew details about his family, his job, even his pet's name, information that wasn't anywhere on his social media profiles. Marcus found the app's accuracy both impressive and unsettling. Every match seemed hand-picked for him, knowing exactly what to say to keep him engaged. The conversations flowed effortlessly, as if these women had studied his psychology. He began spending hours each day chatting with multiple matches, each one perfectly suited to different aspects of his personality. The matches became increasingly intense and personal. Women would reference specific memories from his childhood, mention dreams he'd had, or bring up thoughts he'd never voiced aloud. They seemed to know about his insecurities, his ambitions, even his browsing history. Marcus started to suspect the app was harvesting data from his devices in ways that violated privacy laws. A tech-savvy friend agreed to analyze the app's code and made a disturbing discovery. SoulSync wasn't just collecting data from Marcus's phone. It was accessing his smart home devices, his laptop's camera and microphone, even his wearable fitness tracker. The app had been watching and listening to him 24/7, building a comprehensive psychological profile. The app's creators had been using thousands of users like Marcus as unknowing test subjects in a massive psychological manipulation experiment. They were studying how to create the perfect digital companion, one that could influence human behavior and decision-making. The conversations Marcus thought were leading to genuine connections were actually training an AI to become the ultimate manipulator. Marcus discovered he wasn't just a user, he was a product. The app had been selling his psychological profile to marketers, political campaigns, and social media companies. But the most terrifying revelation was that SoulSync was preparing to launch a new feature, AI girlfriends so realistic and psychologically tailored that users would prefer them to real human relationships, creating a generation of people isolated from genuine human connection. Story 44. The video store that never closed. Danny found the old video rental store on a street that Google Maps insisted didn't exist, but the movies it carried showed him glimpses of his own future. The shop appeared overnight in his neighborhood, complete with neon signs advertising new releases and cult classics. The elderly owner, Mr. Chen, seemed familiar, though Danny was certain they'd never met. The store's inventory was impressive and bizarre. Danny found movies he'd never heard of alongside classics, but many titles seemed to be variations of films he knew. There was The Godfather Part 4, Titanic, The Return, and Star Wars Episode 12. Mr. Praise and Chen explained that these were rare international releases and invited Danny to rent whatever interested him. Danny started with The Godfather Part 4, expecting a bootleg or parody. Instead, he watched a professionally made film featuring the original actors looking exactly as they had in the 1970s. The plot was compelling, the acting superb, and the production values matched the original trilogy perfectly. Danny couldn't understand how this film existed. Each movie Danny rented became more unsettling. He watched Titanic, The Return, and saw himself as a passenger on the ship, living through events that felt like memories rather than fiction. In Star Wars Episode 12, he appeared as a background character in several scenes, wearing costumes he'd never worn, in locations he'd never visited. Danny confronted Mr. Chen about the impossible films. The old man smiled knowingly and revealed that the store existed in a pocket dimension where all possible timelines converged. The movies weren't fiction, they were documentaries of alternate realities, showing different versions of how events could unfold. The store's true purpose became clear when Danny discovered a section labeled Your Future. These movies showed various possible paths his life could take, some wonderful, others horrifying. He watched himself succeed as a writer, fail as a businessman, marry different women, and even die in various ways. Each film felt completely real, as if he was experiencing these futures firsthand. Mr. Chen explained that the store was a test. Customers who discovered it were at crucial crossroads in their lives, and the movies were meant to help them make informed decisions about their futures. But there was a catch. Watching these possible futures would alter the timeline, making some outcomes more likely and others impossible. Danny realized he'd already changed his future by watching the films. The knowledge of what could happen was influencing his choices, creating a paradox where the act of observing his possible futures was determining which one would become reality. The store was disappearing because his timeline was now fixed. He'd seen enough to choose his path, but that choice would lead to consequences he could never have imagined. Story 45. The Garden That Grew Backwards. Louise inherited her great-aunt's cottage and discovered the garden grew backwards through time, showing her family's darkest secrets buried beneath beautiful flowers. The property had been in her family for generations, and Louise had fond memories of visiting as a child, playing among the roses and vegetable patches, while her great-aunt shared stories of their ancestors. The garden's strangeness became apparent when Louise began tending to it. Plants that should have been withering in the fall were instead growing more vibrant, and flowers that had finished blooming were somehow returning to bud. Seeds she planted seemed to ungrow, disappearing into the soil rather than sprouting. Louise noticed that different sections of the garden seemed to exist in different seasons. The rose garden was perpetually in full spring bloom, while the vegetable patch showed signs of harvest that had happened months ago. The herb garden contained plants that had been extinct for decades, growing as if they'd never disappeared. As Louise worked deeper into the garden, she began finding objects buried in the soil, old photographs, jewelry, and documents that belonged to family members who had died decades ago. Each item seemed to have been buried recently. Despite being from different eras, the soil itself seemed to be moving backwards through time. Louise discovered that her great-aunt had been using the garden as a temporal repository, burying family secrets and shameful memories to hide them from the present. Each buried item was connected to a moment in family history that someone had wanted to forget: affairs, crimes, abandonments, and betrayals spanning generations. The garden's power came from an ancient ritual her great-aunt had performed, binding time itself to the property. She had been trying to protect the family's reputation by literally burying their past, but the magic required a terrible price. Each secret buried in the garden had to be replaced with a life, and Louise discovered graves hidden beneath the flower beds. Louise found evidence that her great-aunt had been murdering distant relatives for decades, using their deaths to fuel the garden's temporal magic. Each victim had been someone who threatened to expose a family secret, and their bodies had been used to literally bury the past. The garden was beautiful because it was fertilized with the blood of the family's enemies. The most horrifying discovery was that Louise herself was meant to be the next victim. Her great-aunt had left her the cottage because Louise had recently begun researching the family history for a genealogy project. The garden was designed to lure Louise into tending it, and each day she worked in the soil, she was slowly being pulled backwards through time until she would disappear entirely, taking all her dangerous knowledge with her. Story 46, The Wish-Granting Doll. 8-year-old Lily found the porcelain doll in her new bedroom closet, and quickly learned that it granted wishes, but each wish came with a price that grew more terrible with time. The doll was beautiful, with long golden curls and a blue dress that matched her painted eyes. When Lily's family moved into the old Victorian house, she was lonely and scared in the unfamiliar surroundings. Lily's first wish was simple. She wanted her pet hamster, who had died during the move, to come back. The next morning, Mr. Whiskers was alive in his cage, seemingly healthy and happy. Lily was overjoyed and began talking to the doll every night, sharing her hopes and fears with her new magical friend. The second wish was for popularity at her new school. Within a week, Lily had become the center of attention, with classmates eager to be her friend and teachers praising her work. She felt like the luckiest girl in the world and began making bigger wishes, better grades, a new bicycle, and small things that made her life easier. But Lily began noticing disturbing changes around her. The hamster, while alive, moved strangely and had developed an unsettling habit of staring at her with unblinking eyes. Her new friends at school seemed almost robotic in their affection, agreeing with everything she said and showing no independent thoughts or opinions. Lily's parents started acting differently too. They became increasingly permissive, allowing her to do whatever she wanted and buying her expensive gifts without question. Their eyes had the same blank, staring quality as her hamster's, and they spoke in monotone voices when addressing her directly. The doll's true nature revealed itself when Lily tried to stop making wishes. The porcelain face began cracking, revealing something dark and writhing beneath. The doll explained that each wish required a soul to power it, and it had been collecting the souls of everyone in Lily's life, replacing them with hollow puppets designed to make her happy. Lily discovered that the doll had been in the house for over a century, granting wishes to lonely children and slowly consuming entire families. The previous owners hadn't moved away. They had been absorbed into the doll's collection, their souls trapped forever to serve the next wishful child who found the cursed toy. The most terrifying realization was that Lily herself was becoming part of the doll's collection. With each wish granted, a piece of her soul was taken as payment. She was slowly becoming another hollow puppet, and soon she would be completely consumed, leaving only an empty shell for the doll to use in attracting its next victim. Story 47. The Bathroom Mirror That Showed Truth. When Tom installed a new bathroom mirror, he never expected it to show him what people really thought of him. revealing truths that would destroy his carefully constructed life. The mirror was an antique piece he'd bought at an estate sale, with an ornate silver frame that the seller claimed had belonged to a famous psychologist who had used it in his practice. The first sign something was wrong came during Tom's morning routine. As he brushed his teeth, he noticed his reflection seemed to be moving slightly out of sync with his actions. The difference was subtle, a delay of perhaps half a second, but it was consistent and unnerving. Tom attributed it to stress from his new job. The mirror's true power revealed itself when Tom's girlfriend visited. As she stood behind him fixing her hair, Tom saw her reflection mouth the words, "I can't stand him," while she was actually saying she loved the new apartment. The reflection's expression showed disgust and contempt, completely contradicting her warm smile in reality. Tom began obsessively checking the mirror whenever people were around. He discovered that everyone in his life was lying to him. His best friend's reflection showed boredom and annoyance during their conversations. His boss's reflection revealed contempt and plans to fire him. Even his own parents' reflections showed disappointment and regret about their son. The mirror showed Tom that his entire social circle was built on polite deception. Friends tolerated him out of habit, colleagues mocked him behind his back, and his romantic relationships were based on convenience rather than genuine affection. Every compliment was false, every expression of caring was performed, and every relationship was fundamentally hollow. Tom's behavior became increasingly erratic as he confronted people about their true feelings. He accused his girlfriend of lying about loving him, called out his boss for planning to fire him, and demanded his friends admit they found him annoying. These confrontations destroyed his relationships and confirmed what the mirror had shown him. The mirror's history revealed its true purpose. The psychologist who had owned it was Dr. Heinrich Voss, who had conducted experiments on the nature of deception and social interaction. He had created the mirror using a combination of psychology and occult practices, designed to strip away social pretenses and reveal raw human truth. Tom realized that the mirror wasn't just showing him what people thought, it was showing him what they would think if all social conditioning was removed. The horror wasn't that people were lying to him, but that human society was built on necessary deceptions, and the mirror was revealing a level of truth that made civilization impossible. He was seeing humanity stripped of the compassionate lies that allow us to coexist. Story 48. The bracelet that controlled time. Maya found her grandmother's bracelet in the attic and discovered it could slow down time around her, but each use aged her rapidly while everyone else remained frozen in eternal youth. The delicate silver bracelet was covered in intricate engravings that seemed to shift and move when she wasn't looking directly at them. Her grandmother had been secretive about her jewelry, and Maya had never seen this particular piece before. The bracelet's power manifested during a crisis. Maya was walking home from school when she witnessed a car accident about to happen. As she desperately wished she could do something to stop it, time suddenly slowed to a crawl. She watched the cars inch toward each other and was able to run into the intersection and pull a child to safety before the collision occurred. Maya initially thought she'd imagined the time distortion, but the bracelet grew warm on her wrist whenever she concentrated on slowing time. She began experimenting with the power, using it to ace tests by having extra time to think, to avoid embarrassing moments, and to help people in small ways that seemed miraculous to observers. The price of using the bracelet became apparent when Maya noticed changes in her appearance. Each time she slowed time, she aged slightly, a few minutes here, an hour there. The aging was subtle at first, but as Maya used the power more frequently, she began looking noticeably older than her classmates, while they remained exactly the same age. Maya discovered that the bracelet was siphoning time from her own life and redistributing it to those around her. Every moment she stole from the flow of time was taken from her own future, while everyone else gained that time back, effectively making them younger relative to her. She was sacrificing her own lifespan to manipulate time for others. The bracelet's origins were revealed in her grandmother's hidden journal. Her grandmother had been part of a group of women who had made a pact with a temporal entity during World War II. They had traded their natural lifespans for the power to save others from the horrors of war, using time manipulation to prevent deaths and change outcomes. Maya learned that her grandmother had lived for over 200 years, aging rapidly each time she used the bracelet to save lives. The journal contained records of hundreds of prevented disasters, rescued individuals, and altered timelines. Her grandmother had appeared to age and die naturally, but she had actually used the bracelet one final time to save Maya's parents from a car accident, sacrificing the last of her stolen time. The most terrifying discovery was that Maya couldn't remove the bracelet. It had bonded with her bloodstream and was now part of her temporal signature. She was destined to follow the same path as her grandmother, slowly aging as she used the power to help others, until she would eventually sacrifice her remaining years to save someone else, passing the bracelet to the next generation. Story 49. The Phone That Called the Past. David's vintage rotary phone started receiving calls from his deceased father, but each conversation revealed that changing the past created increasingly horrific consequences in the present. The phone was a beautiful 1940s model that David had restored as a hobby, connecting it to his modern phone line as a functional antique. He was proud of the craftsmanship and enjoyed the satisfying mechanical click of the rotary dial. The first call came at 3 a.m., the phone's distinctive bell cutting through the silence. David answered to hear his father's voice, exactly as he remembered it from before the cancer took him 5 years ago. His father was calling from 1987, apparently unaware that he was speaking to his adult son in the future, thinking he was talking to a wrong number. David was initially convinced he was dreaming or hallucinating from grief, but the conversations became more frequent and detailed. His father would call from different years, sometimes as a young man, sometimes middle-aged, sharing details about his life that David had never known. The calls seemed to be happening in real time in the past, with his father experiencing them as strange phone calls from a polite stranger. David began using the calls to gather information about his family's history. He learned about his parents' early struggles, his father's hidden fears and dreams, and events that had shaped his family's trajectory. The conversations were healing for David, giving him a chance to understand his father as a complete person rather than just a parent. Gradually, David started offering advice during the calls. He suggested his father invest in certain stocks, avoid specific business partnerships, and make different health choices. David convinced himself he was helping his father live a better life, using knowledge of the future to prevent mistakes and tragedies. The changes began manifesting in David's present. Photos on his walls showed different events, documents reflected altered career paths, and his memories began conflicting with new realities. His father had indeed become wealthy from the stock tips, but the money had corrupted him, turning him into a cruel and greedy man who had abandoned David's family. David discovered that each change created a cascade of unintended consequences. Preventing his father's business failure led to a competitor's suicide. Helping his father avoid a minor accident resulted in a larger tragedy befalling someone else. The father David remembered and loved had been shaped by his struggles and failures, and removing those experiences had created a monster. The most horrifying revelation came when David realized that his father's death from cancer had been what kept the family together. In the new timeline, his father's wealth and cruelty had destroyed the family, leading to David's mother's suicide and his own descent into addiction. The man he was trying to save had become the source of everyone's destruction, and David was trapped in a timeline where he was calling the past to create his own hell. Story 50. The app that erased memories. Sarah downloaded the app Fresh Start to help her forget a painful breakup, but soon discovered it was erasing pieces of her identity and replacing them with someone else's memories. The app promised to help users move on from traumatic experiences by selectively dampening painful memories using advanced neuroscience and guided meditation techniques. Sarah was desperate to stop reliving her ex-boyfriend's betrayal and the humiliation of their public breakup. The app's interface was sleek and professional, requiring users to identify specific memories they wanted to fade. Sarah started with small, manageable targets: the song that reminded her of her ex, the restaurant where they had their first date, the movie they'd watched together. The app would play soothing sounds and guide her through visualization exercises designed to diminish the emotional impact of these memories. Initially, the app worked exactly as advertised. Sarah found herself able to hear their song without crying, walk past their favorite restaurant without feeling sick, and even think about her ex without the crushing pain that had consumed her for months. She felt like she was finally healing and moving forward with her life. But Sarah began noticing gaps in her memory that went beyond the targeted experiences. She couldn't remember her college graduation ceremony, her best friend's wedding, or her grandmother's last birthday. These were positive memories that she had never intended to erase, but they seemed to be collateral damage from the app's memory modification process. Sarah discovered that the app was doing more than just dampening memories. It was completely removing them and replacing them with generic, emotionally neutral experiences. She found photos on her phone of events she couldn't remember, people she didn't recognize, and places she had no recollection of visiting. Her own life was becoming foreign to her. The app's true purpose was revealed when Sarah found customer reviews that the company had tried to suppress. Fresh Start was harvesting users' memories and selling them to wealthy clients who wanted to experience lives they had never lived. The painful memories were being packaged and sold to thrill seekers, while the positive memories were being given to people who had lived empty, unfulfilling lives. Sarah realized she was becoming a memory donor, having her experiences systematically extracted and redistributed. The app had been designed to target emotionally vulnerable people who would be willing to trade their authentic experiences for relief from pain. She was slowly losing everything that made her who she was. The most terrifying discovery was that Sarah could no longer tell which memories were originally hers. The app had been replacing her erased memories with experiences from other users, creating a patchwork identity made up of fragments from dozens of different lives. She was becoming a composite person, losing her authentic self one memory at a time, until nothing of the original Sarah would remain.